It was a sunny morning, peaceful, until Sarah's world shattered with a scream. Standing by her pool, towel wrapped around her, she heard Karen's furious voice. "You need to remove this pool. It's against the rules." In that moment, Sarah knew she could lose everything. But what happened next will shock even those who've seen it all. But let's start from the beginning. It was a perfect sunny morning in Pinewood Springs, a quiet suburban town where Sarah Owens, a former Olympic swimmer, enjoyed the calm solitude of her meticulously designed pool. The water shimmered under the sun, a testament to the months she'd spent crafting this space not just for leisure, but as a crucial part of her daily training routine. To Sarah, this pool was more than a luxury. It was the foundation of her professional life. She sat on the poolside, drying off, her thoughts lost in the rhythmic sound of water gently rippling against the tiles. But the peace didn't last. The sharp, piercing voice of Karen Pierce, the HOA president, cut through the tranquility like a blade. "Sarah Owens, you need to take down that eyesore." Karen's shrill tone echoed across the yard, her fury palpable. "It's against the community guidelines. You can't have a pool this size. It's too extravagant." Sarah froze, the towel still wrapped around her. She looked up, blinking in disbelief. "What are you talking about?" she stammered. "I followed every rule. I even got approval for the design." "Not anymore," Karen sneered, her face red with indignation. "I've already made a complaint to the city. It's coming down, whether you like it or not." The words hit Sarah like a punch to the gut. She felt her heart rate spike, her palms suddenly clammy. This pool wasn't just an investment. It was her lifeline, her training ground, the place where she honed the skills that had defined her career. To lose it, to have it ripped away by someone who didn't understand its significance, felt like an injustice too cruel to bear. Despite the shock coursing through her, Sarah squared her shoulders. She wasn't going to let this happen. "I'll fight this," she said, her voice shaking with a mixture of disbelief and determination. The cold water of the pool reflected her inner turmoil as she stared back at Karen, refusing to show weakness. Karen's harassment didn't let up. In fact, it intensified with each passing week. She plastered the neighborhood with flyers, her words sharp and venomous, aiming to turn everyone against Sarah. Who does she think she is, bringing such a monstrosity into our peaceful community? Karen's voice seemed to echo in every corner, seeding doubt and disdain. Sarah could feel it, the subtle shift. The once friendly faces of her neighbors now avoided her gaze. When she left for her daily training, there were no more waves or warm hellos. Instead, there were whispers, glances that lingered just a bit too long, a sense of collective judgment that hung heavy in the air. It stung, more than Sarah cared to admit. The isolation was suffocating. But amidst the suffocating silence, something within her began to shift. The quiet that Karen had imposed on her started to burn, fueling a quiet fury. It wasn't just about the pool anymore. It was about everything Karen had taken from her. Her sense of belonging, her place in the community. Sarah's heart pounded with an urgency she hadn't felt before. One evening, as the weight of it all threatened to crush her, Sarah found herself confiding in her best friend Jenna. "Karen's nothing more than a small-town tyrant," she said, her voice steady but tinged with the undercurrent of rage she'd been holding back. "She thinks she can control everyone, and now she's going after my career. I'm done being quiet. I'm going to expose her." Jenna's eyes widened, but she nodded, sensing the shift in Sarah. This wasn't just about standing up for herself anymore. This was about dismantling the fear that Karen had so expertly built. Sarah wasn't going to let Karen's manipulation rule her life any longer. She was ready to fight back, to take back the power Karen had stolen from her, and she knew it wouldn't be easy. But she was done being silent, and this time, Karen's reign of fear was about to end. Sarah wasn't about to let Karen win. With a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in weeks, she hired a lawyer and began meticulously collecting evidence: photos, emails, statements from neighbors. But it wasn't until Brian Lawson, her old Olympic coach, showed up that things truly started to shift. Brian's presence was a reminder of her strength, of the woman she used to be, unbreakable, determined, relentless. "Sarah," he said, his tone steady, "we can make this go viral. If you want to get back at Karen, it's time to use your platform." His words hit Sarah like a surge of electricity. It wasn't just about winning a legal battle anymore. It was about taking back her narrative. She knew she had a voice, but she'd been too afraid to use it, until now. With Brian's encouragement, Sarah recorded a video that would change everything. She sat in front of the camera, her expression calm but resolute. In the video, she shared her side of the story: how Karen had bullied her, how the HOA president had used her position to make arbitrary rules that served only her own interests. Sarah didn't just talk about the pool. She exposed Karen's long history of intimidation and selective enforcement of community guidelines. Within hours, the video exploded online. Shares, comments, and messages of support flooded in. It was overwhelming, but it felt empowering, too. People from all over rallied behind her. It was as if a weight had been lifted. She wasn't alone anymore. And Karen? She wasn't prepared for the storm that was coming her way. The backlash was swift. Karen, her face red with fury, stormed up to Sarah's house, surrounded by a growing crowd of neighbors and onlookers. "You think you can ruin me with your lies?" she hissed, her voice trembling with rage. Sarah met her glare with a cold smile. "I'm not ruining you," she said, her voice steady and full of purpose. "I'm showing the world who you really are." It wasn't just a battle for the pool anymore. It was a fight for justice, and Sarah was ready to win. The following weeks passed in a blur of triumph and resolution. The fallout from the viral video was swift and undeniable. The HOA, once too powerful to challenge, was forced to review its policies under public pressure. Karen, who had used her position to control and intimidate, was ousted from her role as president. The community she had so fiercely held in her grip now turned its back on her. It was a public reckoning. But that wasn't all. The city, after much scrutiny, dropped its complaint about Sarah's pool. They acknowledged what Sarah had known all along. It met every legal requirement. The fight that had consumed her for so long was over, and she had come out on top. As Karen packed up her belongings, Sarah stood by the pool, the sun setting in front of her. The sky was painted in deep hues of orange and purple, and for the first time in weeks, she felt a deep sense of calm. The tension that had gripped her heart, the constant battle against the unjust forces around her, was finally gone. She had fought back, not just for her pool, but for her right to live freely, without fear of control from someone who thrived on manipulation and power. The victory wasn't just about winning against Karen. It was about reclaiming her peace. Sarah could finally exhale, the weight she'd carried for so long lifted from her shoulders. Meanwhile, Karen was left to face the consequences of her actions. The community, once fractured by her divisive leadership, began to heal. Neighbors who had once kept their distance, afraid to speak out, now came forward with apologies and support. Sarah had given them the courage to stand up, to fight for what was right. Later that night, Sarah dove into her pool for a late swim, the cool water embracing her like a long-lost friend. As she glided through the stillness, she couldn't help but smile. Justice had been served, and she had reclaimed not just her pool, but her peace. The battle was over, and she had won.